has the Prime Minister been so rattled by the drought that his judgment and his knowledge of his government's policy positions is utterly flawed? Tony Abbott went to an election in 2013 on behalf of the Liberal Party in relation to the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. Now, remember, this was a $10 billion outfit set up as part of the deal that Julia Gillard did with the Greens after the 2010 election, which kept her as Prime Minister in a hung parliament. Tony Abbott called it the Bob Brown Bank and pledged to shut it down in government. He won 18 seats from the Labor Party in 2013, and this was a central component of his policy position: get rid of the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. As Prime Minister, the House of Representatives, dominated by the coalition, twice voted for the abolition of this thing. Now, the same Liberal Party is giving $1 billion to the same Clean Energy Finance Corporation for concessional loans for energy projects, but not to renew or build a coal-fired power station. This is the Morrison government. So here is the Liberal Party coalition putting money, $1 billion, your money, into an outfit it was elected to abolish in 2013. And, of course, this is music to the ears of the Greens and even some in the Labor Party. In short, it's beyond belief. As Mark Latham said to me today, the government has lost the plot. Here are private companies, renewable energy companies, bloated with government subsidies, building wind farms and solar farms, foreign-owned, out in the middle of prime agricultural land, and they're saying, how do we get the power to the grid? How do we put the transmission in place? Easy answer, ask Scott. He'll give you $1 billion. If renewables were so good and these companies so effective, why aren't they paying to get their unreliable electricity to the grid? They should pay. Now, just when I've been calling for a substantial investment for battling family farmers, underwrite the cost of fodder and water and freight, to be met with an emphatic no, here is $1 billion, also in the bush, but for private and foreign-owned outfits already subsidised who refuse to build their own transmission links, which should be their responsibility. No, money from the taxpayer. And Scott Morrison has $1 billion as a gift to them. The taxpayers are the loser. The farmers are the loser. And these companies, I'm sure, are laughing at the extent to which they've pulled the wool over the government's eyes. Your money, further subsidising big companies who should be funding these costs themselves. As Mark Latham said to me today, if this renewable energy mob want to make money out of solar and wind, and they're heavily subsidised, they should fund their own transmission costs into the grid. This should not be your money, especially when other priorities are so pressing, like farmers who can no longer afford to feed their breeding stock and are sending them to slaughter. But, hang on, it gets worse. These subsidies are for things like battery technology, which is completely unproven.
And, by the way, not getting better.
No.
I mean, there's been no advances to speak of in all that the billions have been spent on batteries. No progress has been made, real progress, in 5 years.
Absolutely.
Nothing.
Well, Mark Latham and I were talking about this today on my radio program, and as Mark said, the head of AGL has argued that for a 100% renewable economy, you'd need 350,000 shipping containers full of batteries. And if you lay them end on end, they'd stretch from Sydney to Perth and into the Indian Ocean. The technology does not exist. And Scott Morrison is washing your money down the drain. Proof of the folly of the announcement is that it was warmly endorsed by Malcolm Turnbull. Then the Snowy 2.0. It doesn't stack up financially or on the energy front. The billion is for them too. We're going to be up for billions of dollars for negligible return if we're lucky, so we throw another $1 billion at them. Scott Morrison has done no homework on this, but then tells us the $1 billion will help provide, and I quote, the cheapest and most abundant, reliable energy. It won't be reliable, it won't be abundant because it's not available, and it certainly won't be affordable. Someone has to tell the Morrison government that you can walk down this renewable path, but without coal-fired power at the end of the road, there are blackouts. There's a reason why Matt Canavan, the very smart resources minister, had a shouting match with the Prime Minister last week. The Prime Minister won seats in Queensland by promising a feasibility study into a coal-fired power station at Collinsville. Now Scott Morrison seems to want a feasibility study into the feasibility study. And he won't allow Craig Kelly on Q&A to argue the global warming hoax. No wonder the most widely reported outcome of the stoush between Morrison and Canavan last week was Canavan telling the Prime Minister that, quote, if we keep going in this direction, we'll be effed. Canavan must have known this ridiculous announcement today of further funding the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. He must have known this was in the pipeline. One thing's for sure, Senator Canavan, without any shadow of a doubt, spoke for the majority of Australians.
It really is a class act.
Class, I mean.
A class act.
I mean, the greatest risk now to rural Australia, I've got to say, is if those of us in relative comfort begin to suffer from compassion fatigue. We've got to make sure we know what we're doing. I mean, it's just they had the brawl and the blue, and Matt Canavan speaking for everybody, don't you reckon?
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about that. He always does. I mean,
he's right.
He scares me a bit because if the Labor Party think about it, he is by far the best weapon that the Conservatives have at the moment. He's very,
in the Senate.
good.
Some of these good people.
He never gets it wrong.
Yeah.
You know, this guy's a really clever guy.
But that's the story. It's extraordinary, isn't it? $1 billion. And the Liberal Party, I mean, the Labor Party should be jumping all over this. The Liberal Party were elected in 2013 to abolish the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. Twice the abolition went to the House of Representatives, dominated by the coalition, and twice the House of Representatives voted overwhelmingly to get rid of the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. And here is a Liberal leader giving the same corporation another $1 billion of your money, and none of it for coal-fired power or to repair and renew existing coal-fired power stations. I'll tell you what, we've lost the plot.